In the lesson today, you're going to have more practice dividing rational numbers. In example 1, we're told that Yuma has a hose attached to a rain barrel for her garden. The water drains from the rain barrel at a constant rate. Suppose that the volume of water in the rain barrel decreased by 4 5/8 gallons in 4 minutes. What will be the change in the volume of water after 1 minute? Okay, so since the water is constantly flowing out at the same rate, and it's decreased 4 5/8 gallons in 4 minutes, I'm going to have to divide in order to figure out how much it's going to drain in 1 minute. And so I'm going to start by setting up my problem. Okay, decreasing 4 5/8 gallons is going to be represented by negative 4 5/8. Okay, and I'm going to divide that by the 4 minutes. Okay. And in order to do this division, I'm going to first rewrite my mixed number as a fraction. 8 times 4 is 32. 32 plus 5 is 37. So this is going to be negative 37 eighths divided by 4 over 1. Okay, and we learned from last class that dividing fractions is really just the same as multiplying by the reciprocal of the second number. And so I'm going to rewrite this as negative 37 eighths times 1 over 4. Okay, the reciprocal of 4 is 1/4. Okay, and now I'm ready to do my multiplication. I'm checking to see if I can simplify, but I don't have any numerators or denominators with a common factor. So I'm just going to multiply and get negative 37 over 32. And that's going to be the same as negative 1 5/32. Okay, and so I can say now that the volume of the water will decrease. It will decrease 1 5/32 gallons in 1 minute. Okay, since my number here was negative, I know that that means it's going to decrease 1 5/32 gallon in a minute. In example 2, we want to know what the change in the volume of water will be after 1 minute. And based on the picture that we see here, okay, it says that the water is going to be decreasing, and I can tell because that's represented by a negative number, negative 3 3/5 gallons. Okay, it's going to go down 3 3/5 gallons in 6 minutes. I want to know what the change is going to be after 1 minute. So again, I'm going to have to set up my division in order to do this. Okay, negative 3 3/5 gallons divided by the 6 minutes. Okay, and again, I'm going to start by making my fractions. 5 times 3 is 15. 15 plus 3 is 18. So this is negative 18 fifths divided by 6 over 1. And again, instead of dividing with my fractions, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to have negative 18 fifths times 1 over 6. Okay, and now I'm going to look and see if I can simplify before I multiply, and I can. 6 and 18 have a common factor of 6. 6 goes into 6 once. 6 goes into 18 3 times. Okay, and so now I'm ready to multiply. Okay, and when I do that, I'm going to end up with negative 3/5. Okay, a negative times a positive is negative. 3 times 1 is 3, 5 times 1 is 5, negative 3/5. Okay, so I can say the volume of the water decreases 3/5 gallons per minute. Okay, again, since it was represented by a negative number, that means it's going to be decreasing 3/5 gallons per minute. In example 3, they want us to simplify the following expression, okay? And this is something that is called a complex fraction. So let's talk about what this means right here. This is a complex fraction. Okay, and a complex fraction has a fraction in the numerator or in the denominator or in both places. Okay, a complex fraction. All right, it's like a fraction within a fraction. It has a fraction in either the numerator or the denominator, or it can have a fraction in both parts, and that's what this example has. It has a fraction in both parts. Okay, so it might look a little confusing, but it's really not that bad to deal with once you remember that a fraction represents division. Okay, this is really just saying 3 2/3 divided by negative 2/3. And so I'm just going to rewrite it in a different way. 3 2/3 divided by negative 2/3. Okay, so we just rewrite as a normal division problem. Okay, rewrite as division. All right, now once we're done with that, okay, now we're going to go through and do what we were doing in the previous example. So now, okay, I'm going to rewrite 3 2/3. That's going to be 11/3 divided by negative 2/3. Okay, so here we write as fractions. Okay, and then we're going to do this as a multiplication problem. 11/3 times the reciprocal of negative 2/3 is negative 3/2. Okay, so here we multiply by the reciprocal. All right, and then simplify if possible. And in this case, we can simplify with the 3's. Each 3 is going to become a 1. Okay, and now we're ready to do the multiplication. Okay, this is going to be negative 11/2. Okay, a positive times a negative is a negative number. And then I can just rewrite that as the answer, negative 5 1/2. Example 4 tells us that the location of a submarine changes by negative 6/100 kilometers each minute. How much time does it take to get to the sea bottom? Okay, we can tell by looking at the picture that the bottom of the sea, okay, it's going to be 3/4 kilometers below the sea, the surface of the water. Okay, and again, because it's a negative, I know it's going to be below the surface of the water. Okay, and so I want to figure out, all right, well, if it's going to be decreasing this constant rate of negative 6/100 kilometers each minute, all right, I'm going to break this entire distance up into groups of the negative 6/100 kilometers. So I'm going to have to take this entire distance, which is the negative 3/4 kilometers, negative 3/4, and I'm going to divide that into groups of negative 6/100, negative 6/100. All right, and you may be noticing here, well, I've got a fraction divided by a decimal, and that's going to be pretty tough to do. Okay, so what I'm going to do is rewrite my decimal as a fraction. So I'm going to have negative 3/4, and now I'm just going to divide it by, instead of as a decimal, I'm going to write it as a fraction, negative 6/100. So negative 6/100. Okay, and so there's my division problem. They're already single fractions, so now I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of the second fraction. Negative 3/4 times negative 100/6. All right, and now I'm going to simplify before I multiply. The 3 and the 6 have a common factor of 3. 3 goes into 3 once, into 6 twice. 4 and 100 have a common factor of 4. 4 goes into 4 once and into 125 times. And now I'm ready to multiply, okay? A negative times a negative, my answer is going to be positive, and it's going to be 25/2. Well, 2 goes into 25 12 times. 12 times 2 is 24, so there's going to be 1/2 still left over. Okay, and so this means that it will take 12.5 minutes to get to the sea bottom. Okay, it'll take 12.5 minutes to get to the bottom of the sea. We have 4 practice problems to work on. In letter A, we've got -1 1/3 divided by -1 6/10. Okay, so I'm going to have -1 1/3 divided by -1 6/10. Write the decimal as a fraction first. Now we're ready to turn these into single fractions. -1 1/3 is -4/3 divided by -1 6/10, which is going to be -16/10. Okay, 10 times 1 is 10, plus 6 is 16. When we multiply by the reciprocal, we're going to have -4/3 times -10/16. I can simplify with the 4 and the 16 by a factor of 4. 4 into 4 once, into 16 4 times. Okay, and now I can even simplify with this 4 and this 10. They have a common factor of 2. 2 goes into 4 twice and into 10 5 times. And now I'm ready to multiply. A negative times a negative is positive, so this is going to be positive 5/6. In example B, we have -2/3. Remember, this complex fraction means division, so -2/3 divided by -1/4. When we multiply by the reciprocal, -2/3 times -4/1. Okay, nothing simplifies, so now I multiply. A negative times a negative is positive, so this is going to be positive 8/3, 8/3. 3 goes into 8 twice, with 2/3 still left over. In example C, all right, I'm going to just rewrite by multiplying by the reciprocal, since these are already single fractions. -9/10 times -10/3. I can simplify with the tens. Each of those become a 1. 9 and 3 have a common factor of 3. 3 goes into 3 once and into 9 3 times. Okay, and again, a negative times a negative is positive. This is going to be positive 3/1, which is just 3. Finally, letter D, we have -5/10 divided by -3/13. And so I'm going to write this. -5/10 is really just a fraction -1/2 divided by -3/13. If I multiply by the reciprocal, I have -1/2 times -13/3. Okay. Nothing simplifies, so now I'm ready to multiply. A negative times a negative is positive. This is going to be 13/6. 6 goes into 13 twice, with 1/6 still left over.